For joining us. I'm Bill Hicks. I'm the solutions consultant here in Knoxville. And again, thanks for joining us. And I'm going to hand it immediately now over to Rick Durham, who is our instructor for this program. He's got a brief slideshow for you to talk through the program with us all, give you a little bit more information about it, and then answer whatever questions you have. And we're going to be respectful of your time this morning. And Rick, I'll just hand it over to you, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to walk you through probably about a 15-minute discussion about leadership skills training. And then I want to make sure we allow plenty of time for any questions at the end of that. And you can ask questions as we go along too. I consider this to be pretty informal as we walk through this. Once again, my name is Rick Durham. I have worked for UT, gosh, it's been almost 4 years, and that doesn't seem possible. And it's a wonderful group of people to work with. I just do leadership development skills for manufacturing. And I love my job, good people to work with. And I'm going to walk you through a discussion about our leadership skills training. And as we go through this discussion today, I'll tell you that one of the big focuses of this curriculum, this set of skills training classes, is how are people using these skills back out on the floor? One thing I don't want to do is to encourage people to sit through a 4-hour class and take nothing back to the floor with them. You know, when I start these classes, many times I tell a story. I call it Tim's story, a story about a gentleman named Tim, not Tim Waldo. Another Tim, who I worked at Coors Brewing Company, and there was a gentleman named Tim, and he was the vice president over our facility. One thing I remember about Tim was you could tell that some of his interpersonal skills were not the strongest, but he tended to be able to get through his job and get things done, and did a nice job at that. And one time I was talking to him. He said, "You know, Rick, one of my secrets is I try to attend as many classes as I can. And for each class I go to, I try to make sure that I find one thing from that class that I can go back out on the floor and use right away. And if I do that enough, then that makes a difference in who I am and how well I can do my job. And am I promotable to go on to that next job?" Because we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So, but Tim did an amazing job of applying one thing from each one of those classes he attended. And even if it was a class where he got nothing out of it, he still dug and found something that he could use. And I tracked Tim over the years. Tim was a master brewer he's the youngest master brewer in history of the brewing industry. And I track Tim on a regular basis, and I can tell you he's now a chief operating officer for a company in White Plains, New York. So his philosophy about taking one thing from every class he ever attends has worked for him. And I encourage all the participants of these classes to find that one thing before you go home. Find that one thing you can take back to the job with you. Otherwise, you've just wasted half your day. And everyone's too busy for that. Anyway, that's my story about Tim. Now let me see if I can get my slides to. Felicia, my next slide is not popping up.
Okay, click on the presentation.
Okay.
And try now.
Oh, it worked. Thank you so much. That was a good trick.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. I just want to spend a minute on this slide right here. This is a slide that came from a company called Competitive Technologies. And they talked about not how do you achieve high performance, but how do you sustain high performance in a business. And the idea is that there were two approaches. And if you look over on the left, one of the things for high performance is you have to have strong results. And we know that. And the other aspect down the bottom is you have to have best practices in place. And I think about companies with strong results. Typically today, we're looking at things such as, are we profitable? Are we shipping things on time? Are they high quality? And the list goes on and on about results. But we know we have to have strong results, but we also need best practices to be in place to achieve those results. And best practices can include things such as safety, how well do you practice 5S, lean manufacturing, and it's quite a list. But leadership skills is also one of those best practices. And I make a I make a presentation that if your leadership skills are strong, it's a lot easier to do all those other best practices. If your leadership skills are weak, you won't be able to sustain the high performance, and the high performance will go away. I mean, many times we see cases where you have strong results, but you don't have the best practices in place, and you can't sustain the results. Maybe there's a push from corporate based on something that needs to be done, something needs to be shipped on a short, and we get high results, but we don't sustain it. But in order to get both of them, you have to have the best practices, which would include leadership and strong results. And you get the top box up there, which is sustained high performance, which is really our goal. Because we've all seen businesses that didn't achieve that. They shined for a moment, but they didn't achieve it. Now, so why do we take leadership courses? Why do we take leadership courses? I'm used to working with groups of 12 to 20 supervisors. And it's interesting when I look at the group of supervisors in the room, many times they're either fairly new supervisors with maybe a year, less than a year or a year and a half of experience, or they're supervisors that have been there 10, 20, 30 years. And it's an interesting mix of people. And you always wonder with the folks with 10, 20, 30 years as a supervisor, I mean, they're probably outstanding supervisors, but why did they not get promoted again from that particular job? Because they've stayed in that job for 10, 20, 30 years. And part of the point is that many times they haven't sharpened their leadership skills over the years. We work in manufacturing where everything is urgent and everything is highly important. And that's an important motivator. It's probably one of the reasons I love manufacturing so much. However, when it comes to developing your leadership skills, they're very important, but they may not be so urgent. And so they get pushed off and we never sharpen our skills. So let's quickly walk through and some of the main reasons for doing leadership development. One is we all want to hold on to our leaders. And research shows that a new supervisor who is promoted today, that only 60% of these new supervisors are still around in 2 years. The other 40% have been demoted, they've quit, they didn't have what it took to do the job, and the turnover is really high on new supervisors. Losing 40% is a staggering cost, because you think about what goes into when you promote a new supervisor, what goes into preparing that person for that job. And losing them is financially costs a lot of money. And a 40% turnover is just way too high. The second is we need to nurture our future leaders. And as you can see here, there's a total lack of leadership development for most new supervisors. 47% of them don't receive any type of leadership training whatsoever. And the belief is that leadership training will help them to stay on board and will help us to nurture them so that they not only do well on that job, but they do well on jobs in the future too. And we can keep promoting them and make them high valued employees. The third is, let's talk about the employees for a minute. Let's talk about employee engagement and staff turnover. I'm guessing it's probably about 20 years ago, I was attending a presentation, and it was 20 years ago, but I still remember this presentation like it was yesterday. These two people wrote this book on how do we retain our employees, especially our high performing employees. And they wrote a book called Love 'Em or Lose 'Em. And I still remember one of the presenters was a woman from New Jersey, and she had a really strong New Jersey accent, which I could never copy in a million years. But I still remember her standing in front of the audience, and she said, you know, we did a lot of research with supervisors and managers, and we talked to them about, why do your employees quit? And you know what we found? We found the number one reason they quit is because their boss is a jerk. And I still remember her saying that. And I remember thinking, wow, that sort of stuck. And that has stuck with me for 20 years. And it's still true today that a lot of people quit because of their boss and the relationship they have with their boss. So I went on to look at some of the research from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And now the statistic you see here does not apply to every business. Some businesses have higher turnover because of the nature of the business. But it says if you're above 3.7% turnover, that in a sense, you're higher than the industry, than what could be normal for your industry, although your industry may change a little bit depending on the nature of it. But there's a high cost of paying for the turnover employees who quit. And we know some of these costs. We know we have to recruit new employees, and that's not free. There's a cost associated with that. We have to train the new employee. There are hours by the trainer. There's hours by the employee. But the costs add up. And depending on how complicated the job is, the cost would continue to climb. But if your leadership skills are weak, you will have less employee engagement and your turnover will be higher. And you can measure the cost of those things. The fourth one is looking at quality. And the idea here is that a high quality group of individuals, a high quality team has better quality on their job and in terms of the products they make or the services they deliver. And that's measurable. We can definitely measure when quality does not meet specifications. And we know that all of our customers expect us to not only meet their expectations, but to do better than that. And the fifth one is looking at productivity. And one thing about people, we notice with our supervisors, or if they're consistent or not, and how they treat us. And I don't like to compare employees to children, but one thing about us is that we learn about people being consistent with us when we're very young. I can still remember when my sons were young, when the youngest one was like 4 years old and the oldest one was 8. My youngest son telling me, Dad, when my brother got in trouble for doing this, you didn't ground me the same way. And it's amazing how early they recognize, are you being consistent in how you treat us? And that consistency is important because it helps you to reduce your costs, to meet your goals, and to meet your performance within your work areas. So that's 5 of the reasons for leadership development. And I'm sure that everyone on this Zoom call could probably add to this list, and we could make it a lot longer. Now, I want to start talking a little bit about our approach to leadership development. And part of it here in looking at our solutions is really looking at a team approach. If you want to have a strong team, you need strong leaders in order to achieve that strong team. We've all worked environments where some teams are just better than others. Some teams are higher performing than other teams. And we always wonder, why do we have such a difference? Why aren't all of our teams high performers? Why do we have average ones, weak ones? And what is it with the strong teams? How do they get that way? What's different about them compared to the others? Well, I go back to that. It goes to the leaders of those groups and how strong are those leaders. We use a training approach by a company called Vital Learning. And it's a new series of classes. Vital Learning has been around for over 30 years. And we use the current level of classes are actually some of the best leadership development classes I've ever seen in my career. They've won quite a few awards with these training classes. Last time I went to their website, I saw where it had expanded to 4 different awards from different organizations. It's based on a strong focus on the floor training of how can people come to our classes, practice the skills in the classes. And that's really important. If you don't practice the skills in the class, you will not go back out on the floor and use any of those skills. So we practice it intensively in the class on how do we use those skills. And at the end of every class, there's an assignment for them to go back and do on the floor. And we kick off the second class with a review of the assignment from the first class. So repeatedly focused on, are they using the skills? Are they using the skills? We have a set of 12 classes in our curriculum, and every class is 4 hours in length. Now, here are the titles to the 12 classes. I don't plan to go through all 12 of these with you today, but I wanted you to see this. And I've tried to arrange these more in order of how essential these classes are. And I'll say all of these classes are essential, but some of them are more, I wanted to say basic, but that's not actually the case either. But some are more, I'll just use it anyway. Some are more essential than other topics. And most of the classes you see in the left column where it starts with essential skills of leadership are more basic and essential than the classes in the second column. And the first class, essential skills of leadership, is a prerequisite class that we use because we talk about the topics in that first class in all 12 classes. All 12 classes. And so it's sort of an essential class for people to go through. Then we talk about communication skills. And I tell you, I've seen a lot of communication classes over my life, and most of them were not very good. But this class is different. This class is a lot better than anything I have seen throughout my career. And then the next 2 classes focus more on when an employee does not meet the performance on their jobs, and improving work habits focuses more on are people following safety procedures, are people on time for their jobs, and so forth. And then job skills looks at quality and quantity. So I just wanted to talk about those first 4 classes for a minute, and you can see the topics on all of the other classes.